Michael, you tell me when you want me to stop the video.
I think we should begin.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Bourque, and I am the chair of the FPAC 300 Summer Street Gallery Committee. One housekeeping item, I'm going to ask that everyone places themselves on mute. That way we can be respectful to the presenters, and obviously if you want to speak, you can come off mute. But on behalf of the Fort Point Arts community, I want to welcome all of you to the opening of Crossing Cultures, Family, Memory, Displacement. I'm excited about this evening because this is the first show of our 2021 calendar year, and it marks the reopening of our 300 Summer Street Gallery as we reemerge from COVID. Just prior to everything closing down, we had the high honor of being named the best gallery in Boston by Boston Magazine. It's a remarkable feat for us, and it sets a very high bar. And so I think kicking off the season with Crossing Cultures is very apropos. I'm going to let all of you enjoy the presentation, and Claudia Ruiz, who is the curator of the show, is now going to take you through it. So thank you.
So welcome to Crossing Cultures. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a Cruzando Culturas. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And I would like to thank the Fort Point Arts community for this opportunity. I'm just gonna share my screen now. I would like to begin by acknowledging that our exhibition is being held on the traditional land of the Massachusetts people, past and present, and we honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. So Crossing Cultures, Family, Memory, and Displacement has turned into a traveling exhibition that started in 2018 at the Cambridge Art Association curatorial proposal. So this is an image of our first exhibition in Cambridge. And we did have a reception that was before the pandemic hit us. So we have a beautiful reception with food and music from all our countries. Then our exhibition traveled to Rhode Island last December. This was at the Rhode Island Center for Photographic Arts. And we also have a very interesting, very beautiful exhibition, but no reception because, it's in the middle of the pandemic. So I want to give you a little bit of a background as how this exhibition came to be. So you probably remember the year 2018 where we were having many immigration issues, right? We have the DACA, the DREAM Act, the migrant caravan from Central America, the separation from families, and the wall. But what really, la gota que derramó el vaso, I don't know if you say that in English, the drop that spilled the glass, was that our president was telling people who look like us to go back to our own countries, right? This was a squad. These were some elected officials who were being attacked by our own president. And so I wanted to do something. And so Crossing Cultures was born out of this environment, and this was the frame. And Crossing Cultures is my first experience as a curator. Was born in response to this crisis and also as an act of resilience. So I believe this exhibition is a celebration of diversity and a gift to our community, especially during times that our country is so divided. And for this exhibition, my dream was to find an artist from every single continent who were immigrants and who were working on themes of family, memory, displacement, and identity. And so this is how all the people that are in this exhibition came together. This is a photograph of the Fort Eins Community Gallery with all our work. And for this exhibition, we are now 5 artists. We started being 4, but now 5 artists with roots in 4 different continents. And we use different mediums: photography, mixed media, painting, and video installation. And through our art, we uncover our family stories. We reflect upon what we have left behind while shifting countries. And at the same time, we honor and remember family traditions and vanishing ways of life with our art. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about each of the artists, and then they're going to present their own work. Astrid Reischwitz is a visual artist originally from Germany, who I have known for many years. She's my friend. And for this exhibition, she brings her stories from the kitchen table, a series about her family village in Germany, which has won many awards and has been exhibited internationally. In this Crossing Culture 3.0, Astrid is introducing her unique photography with embroidery, which are the two photographs on the sides, from the series Spin Club Tapestry, in which she examines personal and collective memory. Nilou Moochhala is an artist originally from India that I met in 2018. She's a collage and mixed media artist whose work examines issues of cross-cultural change and transformation. And for this exhibition, Nilou created 10 intricate storytelling suitcases. Each one has its own poem. And for this exhibition, she has created work on fabric. That she's going to talk about that. Vivian Poey is an artist and a professor of photography at Leipzig University, who I also met a few years ago in a photography class. Her work examines a number of issues ranging from migration and cultural assimilation to the passing of time. She was born in Mexico of Cuban parents and lived in Guatemala and Colombia before moving to the US. This complicated trajectory informs all of her art. And this time we have a new member, Shabnam Hanesari. She is an artist originally from Isfahan, Iran, who produces life-size paintings. She's currently an MFA candidate at UMass Dartmouth. And I am also a participating artist in this exhibition. I am originally from Lima, Peru. And for this exhibition, I am bringing two bodies of work from my family project. And I will talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. And just to finish this introduction, I want to quote my favorite writer, Isabel Allende, an immigrant herself. For those without roots in a place, memory is essential to maintain a sense of continuity in life. So memory is the common thread that links our bodies of work. And I'm just going to invite Astrid to present her work. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really glad that I'm here with you all. And thanks for the Fort Point Community Gallery for this opportunity. Claudia, it was an amazing experience to be part of this exhibition. I'm really glad that we were able to travel a little bit. So thank you for organizing everything, for all you did. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. So as Claudia mentioned, I have images from two portfolios in this exhibition. One is from Stories from the Kitchen Table, and the other one is called Spin Club Tapestry. Stories from the Kitchen Table is a reflection on memory, identity, and heritage that I created to preserve and to honor a fading way of life in my childhood home. When I first approached this series, I thought about the meaning of the word home itself. For me, it certainly it means the location. So it means traveling back to a very small farming village in northern Germany, to an old farmhouse that seems to be the only remaining and untouched house in the village. When I go back and visit, I always feel that everything in its surroundings has been renovated and modernized, but this house contains still so much history and memory that I really wanted to work with my family story. So I feel that I need to document my childhood home, the people who have passed through and that one day very soon will be left behind. Another ingredients of home that I absorb while visiting are also the flavors of dishes, old furnishings, photographs, knickknacks, and worn kitchen tools that have been there well before I was born. But most of all, home for me means sitting around the dinner table with family and friends, to enjoy a meal and to talk about stories or talk about the day and share stories old and new. My composite images in this project are based on old family photos that I combine with what I see today, with my emotional connection with the photograph or the person or the story. My grandmother was a great influence. She's in this image, and she was a keeper of keys to a local farmhouse museum that was located across the street. So she became the keeper of local history, and I'm also very interested in local history. She's also the keeper of family stories and tales that were often shared among women in spin clubs. So these spin clubs are in a very old tradition that probably goes back to the Middle Ages, and goes back to the meeting of small groups of women that would stay together as a support group throughout their lives. And in the Middle Ages, they would spin wool, they would do needlework and stitching, and they continued meeting in this fashion until modern times. But now it's also a dying tradition, so these groups barely exist. So I thought it would be a very nice and important way of telling their stories. And so the stories from the kitchen table transforms this tradition of storytelling into a visual journey. Along the way, while I worked on this project, I became aware how important the fabric was that these women created through decades, through centuries. And in this project, it was the glue between present and past. But for my project Spin Club Tapestry, I wanted to give it a little bit more room because I saw how important it is and how important it is also in terms of memory, in addressing cultural and also personal memory. So my project Spin Club Tapestry explores cultural memory by embroidering photographs inspired by the tradition of these spin clubs in Northern Germany. My composite take on the form of tapestries, combining images of embroidered spin club fabrics with old and new photographs from the village. So I source all material in the village. And by that, I connect the present and the past by recreating and reimagining pieces of the embroidery. By following the stitches in these fabrics, I follow a path through the lives of my ancestors, their layout of a perfect pattern, but also the mistakes they make. And along the way, I obviously add my own mistakes in life and also in the embroidery on the photographs. The patterns I have stitched myself into the paper are only abstractions of the original spin club design. They are fragments of memory. And sometimes the stitching is incomplete, like in this image. You can see that there are holes left on the top of the image as an invitation for future generations. Some of the embroidery or the embroidered fabric is based on decorative towels that were used as wall hangings in the houses in Northern Germany. And I worked with this image that you see here and created a new image that is called Red Vessel. And this is the last image I would like to show, and I would like to thank you. Thanks for listening. I think the tapestry of my life belongs to me, but it's stitched through with the beauty and heartache of past generations. So thank you very much. And I'm going to stop share and pass on to Nilou.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nilou Moochhala. I'm one of the participating artists. Thanks to the Fort Points Arts Community Gallery for having us and hosting this exhibition. It's very exciting to see it for the third iteration. And for me, since mine is a more tactile, three-dimensional piece of work, it's kind of frustrating actually to be on Zoom and not be there looking and, you know, potentially touching some of the objects, but It also, every time I reinstall these suitcases, there's always a slight shift and change happening within them that reconnects me back to the stories I want to tell through each one. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. So my series is called My Very Own Suitcase Series. And when Claudia approached me back in the spring of 2019, I had to set about trying to think of, how I could contribute to this exhibition. Just loved the idea of crossing cultures being the main theme, and this idea not of just of family, but displacement as well. It's something I've been grappling with and dealing with since my days in graduate school, which was a very, very long time ago. But always been interested in using tools of art and design to connect displaced people, to connect to environments that are seemingly opposite. How can you use visual languages to bring, these different spaces together? And before I jump into actually showing you some of the things, these are some of the dualities that I sit with and live with almost on a daily basis. It could be a much longer list, but some of the things that were interesting to me was just the idea of, past and present, or past where you grew up somewhere else versus a present here, how you make that home. The idea of being Indian. I grew up in India till the age of 18, but also so much American. I spent 30 years of my life in this country, being very formed at a young age, by my experiences here. And then the idea of being an artist and a designer, even within my own visual practice, I am pulled in opposite directions on a daily basis. Which one do I attend to? Which one fuels me? So when I was going back to reinstall this show, I started thinking about, well, what are the actual definitions of family memory and displacement? So I actually put it up on this slide to see, and the idea of memory, the power of process of reproducing or recalling what has been learned and retained, or a remembrance, and the idea of dislodging, actually shifting something out of its original position, which we definitely are. And finally, the meaning of home, like how do you recreate that idea of home? Since all of us have left one or more places and come to a different space. So for the suitcases, I set about with a challenge of creating 10 suitcases, each of them having a very different, not only meaning, but that encapsulated a different phase of my life as well, almost like mini memorials or shrines. And it started me thinking of, like in my daily practice, even as a designer, what are the stories? I usually tell stories for other people. So in this exhibition, I had this amazing opportunity to decide what stories I wanted to tell myself about myself, and to everybody else, of course, who was coming to the show. And it was in a medium I had never actually used before, assemblage. Which, going back to what Astrid was saying, you have all these objects that you grew up with that could be ordinary things that suddenly take on so much meaning when you're not at home anymore. So I'll read you an excerpt of something I had written up about these thoughts. Through collaging and assemblage explorations, I attempt to create dreamlike environments that illuminate our collective consciousness as citizens of varied stories and experiences. I aim to preserve those instances and moments that create and define us. How can one recreate that sense of belonging and/or alienation through a visual narrative? As an artist trapped between two cultures, I have embraced the complex existence that arises from this displacement and dislocation. From one's home and the desire to revisit that which is familiar, that is now lost and past. In these suitcase series, I use old family photos, documents, and memorabilia that reflect the journeys and paths taken by various family members, and each one has been built as a memorial to convey specific yet universal messages: love, loss, transition, awakening, living. all of them grouped together to create a complex personal narrative on our human condition. So these are some of the photos of the suitcases, and I'll run through a couple of detailed photographs on 4 suitcases. So this is the first suitcase. It is called Hamara, which means ours in Hindi. It's the Ancestral Suitcase, and all the objects in it have been passed down to me from both maternal and paternal sides of the family. For example, the little embroidery case at the top of the suitcase lid belonged to my maternal grandmother, and the red perfume bottles that are strapped in the blue bands belong to my paternal grandmother, and also the shawl wrapping the suitcase. So these objects in and of themselves don't necessarily have any meaning, but when I weave them together, it creates this sense of environment that they created for me, the protection, the weekend spent visiting all the grandparents, just those sorts of memories that we have now that we are displaced and not together. The second suitcase is called Pyar, which means love in Hindi. And actually for all the suitcases, there was a series of words written as well that go along with each suitcase. So, I've put that up there for you all to read as well. And this suitcase is about my immediate childhood and nuclear family. The idea of growing up within this environment in a culture that, places a lot of importance actually on joint family and extended family. We yet had a very strong ties to each other, 3 girls and my parents. And those are the memories now today when all of us are dispersed in different parts of the world. That is the only thing that connects us. It's not the daily routine that we did. It is those moments of time that we played or shared certain trips or memories or experiences. And so through this suitcase, I was trying to evoke this idea of, fun and adventure and, but yet, also reading and playing, and dresses as well adorn the suitcase that belonged to us when we were small. And then the third suitcase gets into this idea of displacement actually and leaving. And as I started looking into this suitcase and the idea of not only myself leaving, but I realized that all the members of my family left our country of origin at least once and became outsiders. And so I was able to access these very old passport photos of everybody in the family. And the idea behind the suitcase is through these strings and mappings, I've plotted out where everyone in my family went when they landed in the US and who returned back and who ended up staying. So 2 out of 5 of us ended up remaining in the US, but we all shared the same experience of being a displaced person at some time in our life. And also we never went back to our country of origin being the same. We were transformed because once you do leave, you are able to see your own culture in a very different light. And the last suitcase I'm going to go into is called Rona, which means to cry. And it is an ode to my father, who actually I commemorated his 10-year death anniversary just yesterday. So I was preparing these slides, and the idea that, this was a story at the moment when it happened didn't feel impactful. But as I developed all these suitcases together, it, sprang out at me as something that I really needed to do. And the funny thing about this is it's a small suitcase, it's tiny, and there are drawers to store slides. And the story behind my father and his experience in the United States, he was based in Chicago, is that he took over 5,000 slides. And I just thought it was a interesting, play to have his box be about something that he had done so much when he was here. But a lot of these items within this box, belong to him, such as the pipe or the silver cup or the bow ties. And I'm so grateful that I actually do have these objects now, to keep forever when, somebody's not with you anymore. But also some of these photographs I ended up finding for this particular suitcase. I hadn't seen them ever in my life, and I opened them up just for the purposes of this show. And, you know, there were a lot of wonderful, wonderful photos of him as a baby. So in the meanwhile, the pandemic hit. You know, we did the show in the fall of 2019 into that year, November, and then pandemic hits, you know, February 2020, whatever, March last year, or almost be a year now, this coming Saturday that we started the lockdown. So I went into like a panic that I needed to do something during this moment. How do you, you know, stay creative? Like, what can we do during this lockdown? So I started the series called the Virus Series, and I've been doing a daily meditative sketch every day. And I'm on number 362 right now. 365 will be the Saturday, and it will be, I will be then, you know, stopping it. So in actually taking some of those pieces and applying them to this exhibition, I wanted to start experiment. I'll just jump to the next slide to show you what I've started to play with. I wanted to start playing with the idea of fabrics and printing these layered fabrics. And a lot of it does go back to, I mean, Indian fabrics and history, and the, you know, history of the sari and these sorts of materials that have been used to tell stories for like centuries, if not millennia. It's even woven into our flag. The central blue chakra is a spinning wheel, and it was a symbol of independence for our country to actually weave our own clothes, because the British were imposing taxes on, you know, cotton that they would create, they would grow in India, take abroad, and then the citizens, the local Indian citizens, had to pay taxes on that. So the whole freedom movement by Mahatma Gandhi started with weaving your own clothes and actually not buying British goods. So I was thinking about all these things, and, you know, how can I extend this virus series and also these family photographs, and what can I do with this idea of telling stories onto some more traditional, you know, Indian methods. So just for the purposes of this exhibition, these are about 30-inch by 30-inch squares. I started with this idea of taking the virus series and these pretty, you know, official family portraits, going through the generations as they do, and, you know, combining them in some way. It's almost like a family crest or a banner or a shield. So this is where I'm at right now, just trying to, you know, take the suitcases and incorporate it into another sort of format and start playing with that. And potentially go back to a few more suitcases and add to the collection down the line. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Nilou. Shamnam. All yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear
everyone.
you.
I want to thank you. I want to Kelly for this.
Shamnan, we cannot hear you very well.
You were breaking up.
Yeah. You're gonna start again. Can you hear us, Shamnam?
Oh yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay. My name is Shabnam Janasari. I am an Iranian artist and MFA candidate at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. In my work, I incorporate drawing and painting to explore a nostalgia of distant intimacies in my life. My work illuminates the plight of the Iranian woman censored by an overarching patriarchy. My larger scale painting illuminates the life I left behind in Iran. Through the lens of personal experiences, I explore the censorship of Iranian women by an overarching patriarchy and invited the dialogue to reconsider assumptions about women whose lives have been circumstanced by Islamic culture. My life-size figures rendered in oil paint are my friends and family. Also, my portraits often pictured with a camera in hand. I am inspired by women who pushed against the constraints society has placed on them. In my painting, the figures occupy an ideal, secret, and supportive space that departs from reality, and it is imagined by me. Persian carpet serving as a symbol of this ideal world or paradise in warm, saturated color and elaborate pattern that conjure my childhood memory. These patterns act as a bridge between different elements in my painting. Persian carpet represents world that transcend everyday life, which is the kind of space I build for the figures in my painting. I thought domestic Rome with pattern and colors, freeing women from societal rules. By reinventing and creating imaginary space with my intense palette, I construct an abstracted and highly emotive world. Thank you so much, Claudia, to make this happen. And thank you, 4-Point Art community, Michael, Kelly, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're welcoming Vivian. Thank you, Shabnam.
I thought you were next. Sorry. Hi, this is I'm Vivian, and thank you, Claudia, for including me in the exhibit. Thank you for Point Gallery. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So this is a bit of an experiment, some experimental work. Can you see it okay?
Yep.
Right. Oops. Hold on. Sorry, this is just going and going. All right, so so this piece is a little bit of an experimental piece. I've had it in my family. I've had a long history of migration. So my daughter's grandparents are on my side from Cuba, on my husband's side from Haiti. And way before that, our family came from many other places. As part of my work, I had been really interested in borders for a really long time. And interested in photographing for about 10 years. Sorry, for about 10 years, I've been photographing borders. Whether it's walls, windows. I don't know why this is not, sorry, I have something blocking it. Whether, sorry about that. All right, so for about 10 years, I've been photographing all kinds of borders and really thinking very metaphorically about borders, sort of what happens when you're on this side and you can't see what's on the other side. The idea that, you know, that side, you might be able to see it, but it may feel completely different than this side of the border. sort of this idea of perspective about how do we see things from this side versus from that side. And at the same time, I was really interested in the whole idea of the ocean as border, especially when I went to Cuba. I had been doing some work about tracing my family history, especially on my father's side, who I could trace to somebody, to an ancestor who participated in the trading of human beings. And so the ocean for me was also part of this sort of history that is not only my history, but the history that came way before me. As part of that work, I went to Cuba, and I noticed that wherever I was, I could see a little piece of the ocean. And so the idea of Cuba being surrounded by water, and also my own understanding of how many people have died crossing that water, I kept seeing the ocean not only as a border, but also as a kind of grave, in a sense. And at the same time, I was making this work about my family. I went to Cuba. This is an image of my daughter and her cousin in Cuba. So we just happened to grow up in completely opposite sides of this ocean border. But they were born on the same day, exactly, on different shores. So when I went to Cuba, I began to also trace my history and the border. You can see in very faint pencil the trajectory. This is my father's trajectory, and the reason that he left, which is the Cuban Revolution. And so really thinking about the background of the family. However, when I'm gonna move over here. When I started doing this work, I was trying to trace my mother's family, and my mother's family is much more diffuse. I could not figure out where she came from. She had a darker skin than my father's side of the family. And as I was doing that, Trump had instituted his zero tolerance policy, where he began not only deporting a lot of people, but specifically the policy that most disturbed me was the separation of families, of children from their families. I had been doing a little bit of research also about migration, and from 2015 to 2018, the refugee population across the world increased by 59% to 16.5 million. And half of those were children. And so really thinking about children crossing the border, the families, the reasons that they leave and their journeys. I started looking also at the Declaration of Rights of the Child. And I started making little paper boats, thinking about a song about Barquito de Papel, which my daughter and her cousin in Cuba both sang together, and they both knew this song from different, they learned it in their school in both countries. So as I did this work, I started just putting together the images of the borders, but really tying them to my family history, almost as we are one tiny thread in this enormous millions of people crossing the border. And the majority of people who die crossing borders die in the ocean is by drowning. And so again, I was very interested in this entire idea about how do we connect when most of us, in fact, have crossed borders. Most of us have left people behind and started over. I just want to share a tiny bit of the video. The video is about 3 minutes, and I won't share the whole thing. But I superimposed some of my family images within the images of border, almost creating a whole new journey, but really thinking of this as a poem dedicated to all of those people who have left their homes. And I'll move it up a little bit so you can see. So that was the beginning, and this is more toward the end. That's an image of the Mexican border.
Barquito de papel, mi amigo fiel, quiero navegar por el ancho mar, quiero conocer el amigo de allá, bajito de llegar, nuevos de amistad, abajo la guerra, arriba la paz, los niños queremos vivir y cantar, abajo la guerra, arriba la paz, los niños queremos vivir y cantar.
And the video begins really with a night ocean and ends in the night ocean, which I find a little bit terrifying. So that's my work. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Vivi. So I'm going to talk about my work that is at the gallery. And I have two bodies of work, and one body of work is just one image, actually. So 2020 was a really hard year for most of us. All of us know somebody that has died in 2020. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, in March, my sister, my cousin, I like to say cousin sister because in Spanish we call it prima hermana, and the literal translation is cousin sister, who was only 35 years old, died. She was being treated for cancer, and she died at the beginning of March, so it's going to be exactly a year ago. And it was very sad because we couldn't have a proper, funeral for her. And she was also, her dream was to be returned to Lima. That's the city where she was from, but that could never happen. And I was thinking about altars a lot every time. I think, how can I create something for her in my art that would honor her life, her short life? And these photographic altars that are in most Catholic churches, sometimes they're huge, right? And sometimes they're tiny. And this triptych altar was for many months, I was thinking about that. And in Peru, because of the sincretismo, sincretismo religioso, we also have this, we call it retablos ayacuchanos. They're mostly from the Andes. And so the idea started here, and I'm going to show you a photograph I took of her when she was 7. So this is Jimena at age 7, and I took this photograph in my childhood home in Lima. And I wanted, it was going to be important for me to incorporate this image of her in that altar. So this was what I created for her. This is, for me, what is a photographic altar in which I am holding her picture when she was 7 years old. And the ocean and the sky were taken in Lima in 2020. And the wallpaper that is behind me comes also from the house where I took her picture. And I don't know if you can read here, it was important for me to incorporate the natural elements into this altar. And so I have the water, the air, the earth, and also the fire, which I feel like she is, Jimena is surrounded in the color red. And this is for me very symbolic of fire. And I want you to remember this image because later on it's going to come back, the same idea of a face being surrounded in red. In my culture, red has a very strong meaning. In this case, when you're inside a red circle, you are protected from evil. It's like protection from evil. I don't know if you, in some cultures also, when a little baby is born, you put a red piece of yarn in his wrist, right? So for him to be protected. So we have this belief, these ideas. And this is it's a bad photograph of the exhibition at 4 Point Arts. But if you go in person, the colors are much better, I promise. Another body of work I have showing is Maria, and this is if you recall, this is the same wallpaper that you saw in that altar for Jimena. And so Maria, this body of work, I created it in the winter of 2020. It was summer in Peru. It was right before the pandemic that I went to my childhood home to create this body of work, where I wanted to honor a important person from my past. And in this case, I hired a woman from Peru to represent Maria. Maria was a maid that my parents hired when I was about 7 and lived with us for about 2 years. And so I also wanted, for me, it was also important to capture the essence of that house that for me embodied so many memories, right? Not only good, but really negative memories. And for me, it was important that Maria really like reclaim the spaces where she inhabited in the past, you know, for like, so I'm gonna show you some images. Every single image of these, it's staged, of course, and it's about a memory from a childhood. And this is the same ocean that is in the altar, because I wanted to connect these two separate bodies of work that are really very, very close for me together, to record the passing of time in that house. My childhood was very important for me. This is the el patio de mi madre, so my mother's patio. And this is a very special photo for me. This is the hallway where it was a very small house where the 2 bedrooms, you know, this is the hallway, the mini hallway where you have the 2 bedrooms there, and Maria's room was upstairs. And it's called the place where dreams converge. And I wanted to think that this is, you know, a night where all our dreams would come together and hang out. And I wanted each of these images, you know, to be free from being from any kind of format. I want every kind of image to do what it needs to do. In this case, I wanted to, you know, convey that movement where she used to sing and dance, and we used to play together in that house. And duality plays a lot in this body of work, because I always think about this double life that she lived, right? As a young woman who had to leave her house and all the sacrifices that she had to make in order to make a living. And this is the same sky that you saw in the altar. And this is the last image I'm showing you. And I honestly was not thinking when I did this in the picture I took of Jimena when she was 7. I did this to recreate a missing photo of Maria, because we don't really have a photograph of her in our family album. And for me, she was part of the family. So, you know, I'm using the art as a symbolic space of reparation. And in this case, I'm recreating the missing photograph of Maria and placing her inside that a red circle, which I already told you symbolizes protection from evil. So this is the way this connects to the altar. And thank you so much. And if you go in person to the gallery, the experience is really wonderful. All our bodies of work together in that space is really powerful. So I suggest to go and visit. It's a beautiful space, only 2 blocks from South Station, right? 2 blocks from South Station. It's a beautiful walk. So if you have any questions for the artist or any comments, we're here.
I'm gonna throw one out to begin with, and I'm going to direct it to Shabnam. You know, all of the artists have been documenting loss. They've documented history, they've documented loss. Yours is a little bit different in that you documented censorship. So does that create an issue where it'd be difficult for you to go back to Iran?
Oh yes, in my work I am talking about the suppression and censorship imposed by government and society on women.
Okay, I'm a little bit curious for all of you. Has the door been closed in your life regarding your birth countries, or do you go back regularly or hope to go back? So anyone that wants to jump in.
Sure, I'll jump in a little bit. So I was born in Mexico. I wasn't born in Cuba, but for the most part, I couldn't go back. And by the time I was able to go back, it was in the late 90s. But my family was exceedingly opposed to it. My father for ideological reasons, and my mother because she was just really scared. She felt that she didn't feel like he was safe. But I did go, and I met my family, which was one of the most amazing experiences in my life. When I went back to do my research, I was able to do it. It was right after Obama had been in Cuba. And so things had changed dramatically from when I had been there 10 years ago. But even though it's very close by and it seems like a really easy thing to come and go, even now for me, like the idea, it just requires a huge emotional investment to be able to like just cross a tiny bit of ocean somehow. And it wasn't, for most of my life, it wasn't even a possibility, but now it is, luckily.
Thank you. Anyone else? How about you, Astrid?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
You're on, okay, you were on mute.
So I go back as often as I can, which means usually twice a year. And I also like to do that, or especially like to do that because I do most of my photography there for these specific series that are very important to me. And as I mentioned earlier, that a big memory, or all my memories are contained in the old farmhouse. And the old farmhouse already belongs to me. So I have to decide what will happen with that house in the future. And I have the hardest time to decide because I feel that I developed roots here in the US and I will not be able to pick up my old life in Germany. So I have to figure out what's going to happen in the future. I don't know.
Anyone in the audience with questions or comments? It certainly is a wonderful presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you. I go to Peru every other year, and I think, Nilou, you said something that once you have spent some years outside your country, it's never the same when you go back, and that's so sad for me because someday I would like to go back to live there, but I don't know. As you said, Astrid, I've been growing roots here, and I don't know if that's going to be possible. So it's always, you know, pull and push.
I mean, for me, the turning point was when I reached that age where half my life had been spent here and half my life had been spent there. That was quite a while ago, by the way. And no, but jokes aside, I think, I mean, it's not necessarily like a sense of loss that you've left this thing behind, but how you re-engage yourself as an individual. And that's why I talk about the duality. When I'm there, I can't necessarily fit in. When I'm here, I can't necessarily fit in. But you could also use it to your benefit, where, you know, you can be in both these cultures at the same time and pick up some of the best parts of it and be able to see it in a very different perspective. But sometimes those who haven't left have real difficulty, you know, doing so. There can be positive and negative parts of that experience.
So do any of you plan to grow the body of work that's in this show? In other words, is there a next level that you're looking to take it to?
The crossing cultures, we're hoping is going to continue. We have a new artist for the next show, but we are looking for a space. That's actually the challenge. If you're referring to the crossing cultures exhibition, right?
Yes.
But we always incorporate our new work because that's, you know, that's what the expectation is, I guess, because we are at least staying in the New England area. So sometimes, you know, it's good to see all us growing with our work inside the show.
Great. Any of the artists have any more commentary that they'd like to share?
I think one of the things I'd like to share is just that I think part of the work is also, for me, it has been really understanding how privileged my own immigration story has been, especially in light of everything that I see today. You know, I included my US passport in the images, partly because just that little piece of paper changes radically how you're perceived in this country. You know, what your rights are in some way, what your human rights are. And so, I mean, I think for me, it's also really a struggle thinking of myself as an immigrant, but being a very, very privileged immigrant. You know, my parents came in a plane. They didn't leave anyone behind. I was never separated from them. And so for me, I think that there's some level of meditation about other people's journeys and how difficult they are. Yeah. And what our responsibility is too, as immigrants who are privileged in this country, what is our responsibility to the new immigrants and to others coming?
So I'm wondering how you each feel, you know, in your art, you are exposing yourselves. And does it bother you? You know, is it painful to be exposing yourselves, or are you happy to simply share?
I'd like to jump in. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm trying to.
You know, for me, the suitcases, it came at a moment in time where it was a lot of exposure for me, and some of it was quite painful. In fact, there is one suitcase called Tolna, which means to break in Hindi. And not all the suitcases are, you know, some are about love and some are about family and connecting. But there were definitely some very, you know, ones that really exposed vulnerability, I would say, which I don't think I would have necessarily done were I not working with some of those very personal materials. Because there was no translation onto paper or into another medium. I was actually, you know, working with those objects, and I think it was exciting, but also, you know, a little painful. But thank you for asking that question. Yeah.
How about the others?
Especially my new work is a continuum of memory that I will leave behind. So I will never create a house that contains memories in terms of objects from several generations. So I will not be able to do that the way I learned as a child. But my photography is very personal, but it's also something that I will leave behind for the next generation. And in a way, it's also my way of leaving a mark.
Vivian, you seem to have been collecting your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, because it is such a long history, and in some ways, you know, there's something in my history that is just so incredibly shameful to me. Yes, it's very vulnerable to put it out there, but I think, yeah, I do feel very vulnerable. And I think it is really important to put those histories out there. So,
do you feel better because you've done it?
I don't know if I feel better.
No.
I mean, it's hard to feel better about something like that, but I think it has helped me have conversations about what our responsibility is for things that we didn't personally do, but that, right, you know, I'm privileged partly because of that history, right? And so just it has helped me maintain those conversations with other people, initiate new conversations. And so, yeah, maybe. I guess I'm not on the verge of tears like I was when I first read it in black and white on a book, right? So yeah, maybe there's something about airing things out that makes things a little better, but not very much.
Shabnan, yours is a little more current. How does it feel to you?
I'm sorry, did you say
Shabnam.
Shabnam?
Yes. Yours is a little more current. Can you tell us how you feel about it?
I feel happy to share this with others, especially in America. I find people have not that much information about Iranian society. Most people think they are kind of mestiz with the Islamic culture. So I feel okay with sharing my work or my concept and to do some dialogue.
Could I say that it's liberating for you that you can say here things that you couldn't say in your own country?
Yes, it is liberating.
Yeah, well, congratulations. How about you, Claudia? You haven't closed the door on Peru, but you have many memories there.
Yes, I think a little bit is like Astrid, right? For me, it was the death of my last grandparent that forced me to look back and to realize the whole generation was gone, and to start, recollecting my story piece by piece and put it together visually, because I'm not Isabel Allende. I cannot write a book, but I can create visual art. So that was my legacy, I guess. I never thought it like that, but I think it is, right?
Legacy, yeah. Okay, so I was just typing a note to someone who said that they couldn't get on in the beginning. I want everybody to be aware that we're recording this. We're going to be posting it tonight, so it'll be on the internet. And if for any reason you can't find it, just reach out to one of us and we can share it with you. So I've been doing all the talking. Is there anyone else in the audience? I mean, there are family members. Do you want to congratulate your artists?
Yeah, my parents don't speak English, so maybe they're feeling shy.
Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Hi, Gus. We can hear you.
I wonder how you feel being in this country and observing the incredible change in attitudes toward immigrants just in such a short time, and the difference between what has been the attitude toward immigrants for the past 4 years and the incredible change that's occurring almost day by day. How does that affect you?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I mean, discrimination against immigrant goes at different levels, right? You have the, structural, institutionalized, personal, and all sort of discrimination. So yeah, it's good that we have a change in politics. We definitely need to continue this conversation that goes beyond immigration, right? It's about, we need to have conversations about race. We need to continue working on unlearning ways of the past and rebuilding, and start talking about reparations. And we have a lot of work to do. So yeah, but the change of government was a good start. But we cannot rely only in our government. Each of us need to have a lot of work to do. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure that so much has changed. I mean, I know that the policies are changing, right? Especially at the executive level, but I mean, our laws are the same. The attitudes are the same, and I think that we are in a place where there's so much friction about this. And I see it when I read anything about immigration in the paper, and I see all of the comments that come after that. And I'm not so sure that feelings have changed. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope that you're right, and I hope that we're moving in that direction. But I think that for the past probably, you know, more than 100 years, it has been a cyclical thing where there's upheaval. And yeah, I hope you're right. I hope that attitudes really are changing. I'll try to be really positive with your comment. I appreciate that.
Before I close the program, anyone else that would like to speak? All right, well, I'm very pleased to have heard tonight's presentation. I think, you know, the question and answer and your ability to give us, you know, a broader picture than just walking through the gallery is quite wonderful. You know, it is our hope that we can get to phase 4 before the show closes, and that we might be able to have a face-to-face reception. It would be exciting for everybody to come together and celebrate. So on behalf of the Fort Point arts community, I want to thank these artists. It's a privilege to have your work here. So with that,
Thank you. Thank you,
good
Michael.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Bye.